He denied knowing Jesus 3 times in one night. Not under torture, not facing the Romans, to a teenage servant girl standing by a fire. "I don't know him," he said, 3 times. And 40 years later, according to the earliest church historians, they nailed him to a cross, upside down, because he said he wasn't even worthy to die the same way as the man he once denied 3 times in one night. This is Peter, not the saint on the stained glass, the actual man. And his story might be the most human one in the entire New Testament. Let's start with who he actually was. Not a priest, not a scholar, not someone trained to read or write fluently. Acts chapter 4 describes him bluntly. The original Greek word is agrammatoi, unschooled. Some translations soften it. The honest translation is closer to uneducated. He was a fisherman on the Sea of Galilee. His hands smelled like fish and salt water his entire working life before he met Jesus. He worked with his brother Andrew. Long hours, physical labor, mending nets at 3 in the morning. This was not a man anyone expected to lead anything. And his name wasn't even Peter. His name was Simon. Jesus renamed him Petros, rock, which, if you know what happens later in this story, is almost a joke. Because Simon Peter was the least rock-solid person in the entire group. Here's a detail most people never learn. Peter was married. Not a small detail, a specific, confirmed fact. Mark chapter 1. Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law of a fever. A mother-in-law, that means a wife. Paul mentions it directly too, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. He says the other apostles, including the brothers of the Lord and Cephas, that's Peter, traveled with their wives. So picture this differently than you've ever pictured it. Peter wasn't a solitary religious figure. He had a wife, probably children, a mother-in-law he lived near enough that Jesus could just walk in and heal her. A working family man who left his nets one day because a stranger said, "Follow me." And he did. That decision alone should make you respect him, before anything else happens in this story. Now, the night everyone remembers him for. Jesus has just been arrested. Peter follows at a distance, which already tells you something. He didn't run completely. The other 10 scattered entirely. Peter followed, close enough to watch, far enough to stay safe. He ends up in the courtyard of the high priest's house, a fire burning in the middle, people warming themselves. A servant girl looks at him. Not a soldier, not a priest, a servant girl. She says, "You were with him too." And Peter, the man who, hours earlier, pulled out a sword and cut off a man's ear to defend Jesus, says, "I don't know him." First denial. A little while later, someone else says it. Second denial. About an hour after that, a third person says, "Surely you were with him, for you are a Galilean." Your accent gives you away. That's the detail that destroys me every time I read it. It wasn't his face. It wasn't a witness who recognized him. It was the way he talked. The specific Galilean accent that marked him as provincial, as a fisherman, as exactly the kind of person who would follow a Galilean preacher. He couldn't hide his accent. He couldn't hide where he was from. And in his panic, he began to curse and swear, "I do not know the man." Third denial. And immediately, a rooster crowed. Here's the part most retellings skip past too quickly. Luke's gospel adds one detail that the other accounts don't have. At the exact moment the rooster crowed, Jesus turned and looked at Peter, directly at him, across the courtyard, while guards were holding him. While he was about to be beaten, he turned. He looked at Peter, and the text says, Peter went outside and wept bitterly. Not embarrassed, bitterly. This is a grown man, a husband, a father probably, the one Jesus called Rock, sobbing in an alley because he just understood completely what he had done. He had 3 years with this man. He saw him heal people. He saw him feed thousands. He once tried to walk on water toward him. And when it actually mattered, when staying loyal might have gotten him killed, he folded. 3 times. To a servant girl and 2 strangers by a fire. Strangers by a fire. If you're the kind of person who's failed at something important, keep watching. Because what happens next to Peter is the entire reason this story matters. Subscribe if this is your kind of channel. We're not done with him yet. Weeks later, after the resurrection, after everything, Jesus appears to the disciples again, this time by the Sea of Galilee, Peter's lake, the water he fished his whole life. And he asks Peter a question. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter says yes. Jesus asks again, the exact same question. Peter says yes again. And then a third time. 3 questions. Do the math. 3 denials by a fire at night, 3 questions by a fire on a beach, because John's Gospel specifically notes there was a charcoal fire burning when this conversation happened too. The same number, the same element, fire. This is not an accident in the text. Jesus is not lecturing him, not bringing up the failure directly. He is giving him the exact number of chances to say it back. 3 failures, 3 opportunities to undo them. And by the 3rd time Jesus asks, the Gospel says Peter was hurt, grieved, because he understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't casual conversation. This was forgiveness, structured so precisely that it could only be deliberate. Here's what happened after that. The man who denied Jesus to a servant girl because he was scared becomes within about 7 weeks the person who stands up in front of thousands of people in Jerusalem and publicly declares that this same Jesus is the Messiah. In the same city, where the authorities who executed Jesus were still in power. Acts chapter 2, Pentecost. Peter, the fisherman, the one the Greek text calls unschooled, stands up and gives a speech so effective that 3,000 people are reportedly baptized that day. Same man, same fear of consequences should have applied. The Sanhedrin, the same council that condemned Jesus, arrests Peter later in Acts, threatens him directly, and Peter says to their faces, "We must obey God rather than men." This is not the man by the fire. Something happened between the courtyard and this moment, and I think it's worth sitting with what that actually was. Tradition says Peter ended up in Rome, decades later, during the reign of the Emperor Nero, a man known for using Christians as scapegoats after the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD. The early church historians, Eusebius, writing around 300 AD, quoting earlier sources, record that Peter was crucified during this persecution. But here's the detail that gets repeated constantly and is worth examining carefully. The tradition says Peter requested to be crucified upside down because he said he wasn't worthy to die the same way his teacher died. We can't prove this with certainty. It comes from later tradition, not an eyewitness account written down at the time. But here's what makes it worth taking seriously. It's exactly the kind of detail that fits a man who spent decades trying to live down one specific night of denial. A man who once said, "I don't know him," to a servant girl, ending his life insisting he wasn't even equal to the way that man died. Whether the detail is literally true or a story that grew up around him because it captured something everyone understood about his character, either way, it tells you how completely that one night defined the rest of his life. Here's a fact most people have genuinely never heard. In 1939, workers doing maintenance under St. Peter's Basilica in Rome discovered something nobody expected: an ancient Roman necropolis, a cemetery directly beneath the church. Archaeological excavation began. It took decades. In 1968, Pope Paul VI made an announcement that received surprisingly little public attention given what it claimed. Bones found in a specific grave, marked in antiquity with graffiti referring to Peter, were declared, after forensic analysis, to likely belong to a man in his 60s, of robust build, consistent with 1st century burial. The Vatican's official position? These are very probably the bones of Peter the Apostle. Independent archaeologists remain divided. The bones were moved at some point in antiquity, which complicates the chain of evidence. But the location is extraordinary regardless of the final verdict. a first-century grave marked specifically as significant in exactly the spot where tradition for 2,000 years said Peter was buried, underneath the largest church in the Christian world, built precisely because this is where they believed he was laid to rest. The fisherman from Galilee, buried, possibly, under the most famous building in Western Christianity. Here's what I think about when I think about Peter. We remember people for their worst moment or their best moment, rarely both. But Peter's whole story only makes sense if you hold both at once. The man who denied Jesus 3 times in one night to people with almost no power over him at all. And the man who, weeks later, stood in the same city and said the truth out loud to people who could actually kill him for it. Both of those are Peter. The fear was real. The courage that came after was real. He didn't get a clean slate because he forgot what he did. He got a second chance because someone asked him the same question 3 times and gave him the exact number of opportunities to choose differently. That's not a small detail. That's the entire point of why this story has lasted 2,000 years. Most of us will have our own version of that courtyard, a moment we wish we'd been braver. Peter's whole life afterward is proof that the moment after the failure matters just as much as the failure itself. Subscribe. Marcus, the silent witness. He was at that fire. He heard the rooster. He watched a fisherman become something nobody, including Peter himself, thought he had in him.